So, Matt, can you tell us a bit about, as an example of a case study, thinking about the Hexagon, sustainability within companies?
Sure, so let's have a think about that. So, obviously, we know that with the focus on climate change and environmental protection and so on, a lot of organizations are really focused on how do we reduce our environmental impact. So some of that comes from looking at, say, manufacturing processes or product design and so on, but also thinking about the impact of kind of ongoing overheads and operations. So it might just be even thinking about office buildings. And that's quite a nice kind of case study to think about the system interdependencies. So we can see how there's ways of trying to cut, say, energy usage and the associated carbon emissions and environmental impact through engineering. So we can think about some of the technologies that are designed and put in place to make buildings much smarter, much more kind of low emission. So that might be in terms of automated lighting systems that turn on and off as they detect people coming and going. It can be in terms of the ventilation systems. So again, automating those so they run in very efficient ways, reducing opening windows in terms of construction and so on as well. And those engineering solutions can have a real impact in terms of the environmental impact of buildings. But one of the things we see quite often is these really high environmentally rated buildings, when they're designed and put into place, often underperform in terms of how they're doing. So they don't perform as well as the architects and designers and engineers would expect off plan. And we can see that quite often because of the impact of occupants and the impact they have on those buildings themselves. So we can think about within an eco building where we've got all of this technology and kind of computerized heating and ventilation so on going on, and the impact that human behavior can have. So for example, there's a nice case study in the literature around one of these buildings put in place, and they found after the first year it was having these huge energy spikes, and they're trying to work out what's going on in this office building that's causing that. And they found actually it was something really kind of basic. So you had users who kind of moved into this office. They were short of storage space because nobody really talked to them about what they needed and what they needed to do their job, where they store things. So they bought lots of freestanding bookcases and other kind of shelving. So they kind of put that into the building. Because of the design of the office building, that was going in front of the vents that were carrying the cooling air and the warming air. So they were finding that these were obstructed. So the people in the building were getting really warm, so they were opening the large doors and windows and so on, and that was throwing out the automated heating and ventilation system. So it's having to work really hard to counteract the effect of this air coming in. So the occupants wanted this ventilation, they wanted the air coming through because they're feeling hot. That was throwing out the automated systems that were kind of running against it, and the energy was spiking massively. And that was just down to people not having anticipated what the business needs, what the needs were of the people going in there. We can think as well maybe in terms of if we were looking to engage users, maybe in terms of reducing the energy usage. So maybe we were wanting people within a building to switch things off more, save energy. We might decide we want to put an energy dashboard in so people can see how much energy is being used, say on their floor, so by their department. If we think about the Hexagon, we think about the system and what would be needed then to support that. Well, that's probably, we'd call that kind of maybe a technology change. That's a piece of software that will show the energy usage. Maybe we could think about how that can be used by the people. To get that to work, we might need to invest in new kind of sub-metering and changes to the building itself, so we can actually see on a floor-by-floor basis how much energy is being used. So it's not just for the whole building, which might be a bit too high level, wouldn't really kind of interest people. So we might need to make changes there so we can get that data, put it into this dashboard. But actually, we'd also need to think, if we're wanting people to make changes based upon that, then it may well be that we need to look at the processes we have. So there might need to be more flexibility, so people are allowed to switch devices off. Maybe they're allowed to innovate in terms of how they're doing things, so you don't have to leave things running for automatic backups to occur and so on. So there needs to be that flexibility built into the processes itself. It may also be that people need goals to drive them towards doing this. So if the main goal and the thing that you're judged on is how many calls you answer within a specific time, if there isn't something in there around kind of energy usage or sustainability that you're rewarded for, you may not have that motivation to look at this to start with. That might also mean that you need tweaks to the software itself, that technology, to actually kind of feed that back to people. It may be that individuals need training to know what to do, how to take action on, what are the most consuming devices. I know I use a lot of electricity. What do I take action on first? We might need to think about the attitudes that people have as well. So we might need different strategies to engage people who are already quite environmentally minded versus those who aren't. And sometimes actually by targeting people who are really environmental, it can turn them off as well if they think they're being encouraged to do something they already want to do. So there's some considerations there. And then finally, you might need to think about culture, because if we're in a culture where people really don't care about what they're doing, they don't have a stake in the company, maybe they're in a production kind of environment where actually the product they're making is potentially quite harmful, we need to think about how do we make that culture something which is supportive of environmental action and maybe individual action as well.